racing Grand Prix. It's remarkable how he actually moved through the ranks.
People are like, who is this guy? Where has he come from?
I think in my next life I want to be a rock star because I've got so used to that. Yeah. That adulation is just amazing.
I'm aware of the importance in psychology in sport and how it's sort of changed the game, I guess. You guys would know all about this, so I'll start with you, Lisa. Can you tell me about the importance of psychology in sport for you?
Yeah, it's everything. If you can keep your mind together, then you're gonna, reach your full potential at least, and you can have the best talent. I've never had talent, by the way. I was so from average. You can have the best equipment and the best teams and stuff, but at the end of the day, especially in these individual sports where it's all on you, you have to have the mindset that's going to drive you forward, and you have to keep that focus and the pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Who taught you your mindset? Were you born with this mindset, or was there someone who said to you need to be, or was it a combination of both?
I think I was born this way. I do think I was born this way, and I also grew up in a family where, my dad's especially, I had a wonderful supportive mum like you did, but I had a hard-ass dad who expected toughness. He valued physical and mental toughness, so it was always take a teaspoon of concrete and harden up was sort of his saying, and so you learnt, and as a young girl, of course, you want to impress your dad and please your dad, and I think that just grew really from there. And I think that I was a gymnast as a kid, and I had already that extreme focus and obsessive nature. I didn't know how to cope with things as well, but I had that from the very, very beginning, I think.
Yeah. And did you do motivational talks? So have you realised a way that you can give your message and how you got through things to other people who are looking?
Yeah, you know what, the thing that's really solidified it for me in the last few years is that my mum, she had a aneurysm, which is a bleed in the brain, a couple of years ago, and she was left in an absolute sort of not much over a vegetative state. She had hardly any higher function, massive brain damage, and the odds were just stacked against us, doctors saying you never do anything again. And I really pulled down every lesson that I'd learned, and persistence and relentlessness and just self-belief, and she's going to come back, and I was complete denial, if you like, that she was not, and that attitude meant that I, went to extraordinary lengths to find any sort of therapy that I possibly could. I bought everything I could. I, did something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which ended up being a miracle for her, and that attitude and I treated her like an athlete. I'm training an athlete, I'm bringing her back from the brink of disaster, and all of those lessons I was able to really solidify into what they are. They'd sort of been airy-fairy ideas in my head before, but then they really applied in this situation, and that persistence and relentlessness and that discipline and that motivation and that self-belief that she's coming back has now panned out. She's doing everything again. She's reading, writing, walking, talking. It took me 18 months to get her out of the wheelchair. She had no balance whatsoever.
Can you describe how psychology in sport, I guess, took you to the next level?
Look, I didn't know much about it until I was just about to join Grand Prix racing. That means riding for the Honda factory or one of the works bikes and so on. And the team were then sponsored by Rothmans Tobacco, and in this tobacco era, in the late 80s. And before I joined, Honda and Rothmans, or particularly Rothmans, said, we want to test Wayne, before we invest millions and millions in him, we want to test psychologically to see if he's got the power. He's got the talent we can see, but is he strong enough up here?
Right. And
to become a world champion.
What year was this?
That was 1986.
So was that to you mind-boggling? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I just went, what? And they said, yeah, we're not going to sign you until we actually test you. And I went, I don't want to do that. And they, okay, then don't join the team. And I went, okay, I better go out and try it, because this is where I always wanted to be, riding with Freddie Spencer in the factory team of Honda. And they sent me to a gentleman called Phil Fearon down in this little place in England, and I used to go down there and sat with him, and I just thought he was cuckoo, And he kept telling me this stuff, and he said, right, I want to do this test on you. So I had to fill out all these forms and give them the A, B, C answers, and you know, what would you do if an elderly lady was crossing the road? It was all this natural stuff. So I went, this is stupid. Anyway, I answered it all, and he had a look at the results, and he came back and he talked to Rothmans, and they said, he said, mate, if you don't sign him now, you're a fool, because he's going to be a hero.
Creamed it.
Yeah.
You've creamed it.
So I didn't know all this. Anyway, I got signed up by Honda, and they said, we'll sign you up, but you have to continue to see Phil Fearon, the sports psychologist. And I went, no, I don't want to do that. That was all bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
And they said, well, you can't join us. And I went, oh, okay, I have to do it. So I was twisted, my arm was twisted behind my back to do it. However, after about the third or fourth session, I started to understand, and the penny dropped about what he's talking about. And when he started talking about visualization and, you know, dissecting the corners and thinking about not only your fitness, but thinking about what you're eating and thinking about, you know, how you approach the corner and how you get the bike to turn a bit better, body position on the bike, better selection of tyres, a better selection of team people around you, etc., etc., and then start piecing together visualization about the corners and how do we make the bike turn a bit better and a bit later braking and all these little small things. Basically breaking down every corner into about, you know, 3 or 4 sections in each corner, and you think about that over 30 laps, and there's about 20 laps in 20 corners in a lap. So yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of decisions that are being made all that. But straight away you're doing that, you start slowing the process down, and you start thinking about it more. You start thinking about the bike, you start looking at the bitumen surface, you start looking at where the danger points are, where you can't take risk, and all of a sudden you just get this slowed down. It's like the movies in slow motion, and it's just happening at a very slow motion, even though I'm doing 300 kilometers or more. So then once you start to see this, it's like, wow, I can start to think about this and where I'm going and what I'm doing, and all of a sudden you just start stepping up, and then you start doing more reports about it, putting all your fittings down in about the corners, how you feel. I always used to rate the corners, like each corner I'd make it, I did a 5 out of 10. And why? You go, why? Well, I couldn't get the turn, I couldn't get it to turn, I couldn't get it to stop, or you know, I couldn't get the grip on the corner, and I was wheel spinning and so on. And all of a sudden you open up this Pandora's box of information. And because of that, you can then start tuning in this all microscopic areas. And when it's like you try and go out and go one second faster in a lap, it's nearly impossible. But if you break it down into 10 corners at 1/10 of a second, and improve 1/10 there, 1/10 there, all of a sudden it gets easier. Yeah. And then you break it down even further into tenths of a tenth, you know? So it's very microscopic, but you get all these little details together, it all just starts connecting.
Were there many people who were doing the same as you back then?
No, it was very new, and I was embarrassed by it. You know, I never want to tell anybody. I kept it a secret for 2 years while I was Grand Prix racing.
Was that just the image of the idea of, I don't know, seeing a shrink, I guess?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I just thought I was mad, you know, and all these other eyes, maybe they had them too, and I don't really know.
Yeah, they were all not admitting it as well.
maybe, I don't really know, but I was forced to see it. But then after about the 4th go, I went, wow. So then I started bringing him to the circuit, but having Phil tucked away in the cupboard, you know, so that nobody's seen him around, and he wasn't with me, and I had many questions. Oh, who's he? Oh, he's just a friend of my manager's, you know, or whatever. So. But, you know, it worked straight away. I started getting this extra power. I started going faster, and I was making better decisions. And then I could start playing with them in the race. Yeah. Like I'd slow down into the chicane, and they think that, you know, and then coming down to the last 3 laps, and usually the real race is on in the last 3 to 5 laps at the end of a Grand Prix or Formula One or whatever. And that's when you've got to have a good strategy ready. So you'd slow down. I'd slow the pace down into the chicane because I couldn't break away. You know, I had Randy, I think, and Neil Mackenzie behind me, for example, in Austria. And then I'd slowed the pace, and then they thought, oh, they got in front, and I was just kind of play with them. And then with 2 laps to go, I went, right, now I go. And I passed them going up the hill in Austria, I'm talking about, and over the top. And then I just had this super energy power to kind of boost me in. And in fact, I broke the lap record on the last lap of the race because I was trying to get away, and I gapped him and won by about 3 seconds. So, you know, that's what you can build up, and that's how you've got to be motivated, you know, you've got to have, in fact, I must admit, when I just heard Lisa then, she said she wasn't the most talented, neither was I. I wasn't the most talented. I knew I had a talent, but it wasn't like some of these kids that I see or young guys that have got really, really high levels of talent. But what happens then is these guys nearly never succeed because they've got much talent. It's easy for them and they become lazy. But the ones who've got less talent have to work hard, and because they work hard, then they put, they plan to work, you work the plan, and put it back together on the track. And when that happens, mate, you're unstoppable. And then what you didn't have in talent, you now have another power to cover that up and put the two together, and you're invincible.